A lot of us have, as we've been watching and reading about the developments with North Korea over the last several days, we had a discussion about this on the air yesterday, of course. Great many people are seeing a lot of folks trying to figure out exactly what China is doing, what its involvement is in all of this. What direction are things going to go? Because there's, I guess, a belief among many that China pulls the strings when it comes to North Korea, or could be pulling the strings if it chose to do so. I had an opportunity last night to speak with a man who served on the as a national security advisor on the team to then Vice President Dick Cheney. Steve Yates is also a candidate for lieutenant governor in Idaho, and he's formerly the chairman of the state Republican Party. A lot of people don't know this. He is fluent in Mandarin and has had a lot of interface over the years with a great many people in Chinese government in business. And we had a conversation about what might be going on here. 7 minutes after 8 o'clock, it's 60 right now. And Steve Yates joins us this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Bill. Great to be with you.
Uh, we, 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 uh, we were having this brief conversation last night at the Twin Falls County Republican picnic, and the subject came up. What exactly is China's role? What would they be doing right now? I would be, I'm at a loss, but you've had a lot more experience dealing with them. What do you think's going on?
Well, I have nearly a lifetime of experience dealing with them, and I don't know that I'm a lot better off than you in getting a sense of what they're ultimately going to do for the following reasons. There's a very rational approach to China being their number one economic benefactor. They provide a lot of food aid and fuel aid, and there's trade that keeps the North Korean regime alive. They've also enabled North Korea's military programs through proliferation of dangerous technologies for North Korea's capabilities to move forward, all while supposedly under sanctions. So you'd think that if North Korea having potentially nuclear-capable missiles ready to hit U.S. allies or U.S. territory, that would be very alarming to China. Even though they're not our friends, they still would probably be concerned about serious blowback. You think it would be rational that they could rein in their ally and work with the international community to bring about fundamental change in North Korea if what they're doing is violating everyone's interests. But the cold, hard experience that I've had in government and outside of government, but in government in the Bush administration, we had negotiations that were going forward on this. I didn't necessarily support the inducements and deals that were made at the time, but I understood how hard this was because you've got a rogue regime that has made the decision to acquire the world's most dangerous weapons. And there's very little that can change their calculus. And so ultimately, I think the Chinese will only change course if they feel like their leadership or their economy is at real risk. And until then, they'll always try to find a way out from really putting the pressure necessary on North Korea.
I would think, too, that from a perspective, if you're serving in the Chinese government, you're looking at this and thinking, well, if nothing happens at the moment, it can only benefit us by, having the Americans stand on their toes while they deal with this. If it starts to get, a little more heated in a couple of weeks, then they may step in and say, all right, that's enough. But for the moment, they're finding obviously some benefit in the conflict.
I think that's right. But it won't be until it's very, very clear that that the U.S., its alliances, and the fundamentals in North Korea are moving profoundly in a different direction with or without China, and China would at that point begin to bandwagon. But you're absolutely correct that they do not mind at all that this makes things very complicated for Japan, that this makes things very complicated for the United States, that it ties up a lot of time that can't be focused on the trade relationship with China or their territorial claims in the South China Sea or their threats against Taiwan. And so they very much have a record of the last 30 years of this North Korea process spinning out of control, have sought strategic advantage, and there's nothing in their calculus at the moment that's stopping that.
It might also be an opportunity for them to see exactly what we have. I mean, in the arsenal that we could put on the table, maybe not even nuclear, but it gives them an opportunity to see just how far we'll go in a situation like this. So they're taking a bit of a measure, aren't they?
They always do, whether we're doing anything from a military drill to actual real action like the Syria strikes. I'm sure that they were, number one, surprised by those serious strikes, but number two, have studied them more copiously than any Americans have to try to draw lessons. And for sure, if there is anything that would be a surgical strike or a cyber strike or whatever the move was to try to diminish North Korea's ability to threaten us at their time of choosing, China will watch very, very carefully for what it means for what we might be able to do on a broader scale if China became the adventurous hostile power.
Our guest is Steve Yates, and as I've mentioned, he's a Republican candidate for lieutenant governor in Idaho, formerly the Idaho State Republican chairman, and prior to that, he served, as he pointed out, in the Bush administration. He was actually an advisor to then Vice President Dick Cheney on a great many of these matters. We're at 8:12, and we're at 59. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I saw a fellow on TV last night, just briefly, and I was in and out of the room. I didn't get his full name. I got a Colonel McGregor out of it. He's a retired military man, and he was speaking with someone on Fox News and said that in his view, because China's so directly connected to Seoul in South Korea as a trading partner, that if we just stand back and let this thing play out, he believes the Chinese will topple the North Korean government and try to come to some sort of compromise on a unified Korean peninsula simply for trade matters. Is that a little too rosy in that interpretation?
Yeah, I would have someone with that kind of analysis checked for substance abuse. I mean, basically, we've dealt with that theory and that contingency for more than 2 decades. And it is definitely true that since the early 90s, when China had dual recognition of North and South Korea going forward, that the trade relationship with Seoul became very, very significant. But China has an amazingly large trade relationship with Taiwan, and it doesn't stop them from threatening Taiwan with military annihilation with more than a couple thousand missiles aimed at them every single day. And so it's just a complete miscalculation of how China sees its own national interests and what it's prepared to do to protect them. I would love it if these ideas of unified Korean Peninsula would motivate China, but I've been a part of very high-level meetings involving the president and prime ministers of other countries where these things have been floated for more than a couple of decades. And I can just say from some personal experience, it's an elegant idea on paper. It does not change facts on the ground.
I also happened to catch during the same block of programming an interview with the governor of Guam, who was saying that he is not at all alarmed by the president's statement about fire and fury. I know it's a lot of people who apparently have never have no recollection of what real war is like, other than we've been able to manage a lot of the wars we've been in over the last 40 years quite well, just simply because of the overwhelming strength we have. But he said he has no problems with the president's remarks. In fact, he thinks it sends a good warning. But he said he feels there are too many cooks, too many U.S. senators who are chiming in, and that they should really stay out of it at this point. This is going to get very complex in Washington because of debates over declarations of war. If we end up getting involved in anything hotter than the rhetoric, what's your guess on the end game?
Well, it's very, very hard to know what the end game is because, unfortunately, with 3 two-term presidents having tried and failed to change this trajectory, with treaty alliances in place that give an immediate demand of a U.S. response, and the Congress has already voted multiple times in support of those alliances, and then the very imperative of a president of the United States having the responsibility to protect American territories, citizens, especially our forward deployed soldiers. It isn't actually a vote in Congress that decides whether he has to take action if there's a potentially nuclear-tipped missile on a launch pad, or even just an intercontinental ballistic missile on a launch pad. Those are things that historically, under the Constitution, with long-standing precedent in place, those are immediate decisions that a commander-in-chief must make without being able to know what the follow-on consequences could possibly be. And that's the awesome responsibility that has frankly been dumped onto President Trump's lap. History does that. It's not a fair world, but that's where we are. And I really think it's very unproductive for 100 different senators to have 100 different views right now. This is a real crisis, and we want to support this president making the toughest possible call to get the best possible result right now.
We've got a couple of minutes to go. So there was a lot of talk about a potential preemptive strike, and I sort of read that in James Mattis's words about this yesterday. Again, there would be people who would argue that you've got to go to Congress for this, but if that strike happens because we think they're about ready to launch, there's really no argument then, right?
There is not. And just take a moment and reflect. How great is it that we have the possible meanest Marine in the history of the Corps as our Secretary of Defense? And isn't it good that we have a Mad Dog Mattis standing toe-to-toe with a true madman in North Korea? And if the president is following the advice of this distinguished, experienced warfighter, one mean Marine, as my granddad would say, isn't that the way the country really wants us to go in this? And aren't we in a much better place in dealing with this than we've been in recent administrations? So I'm not going to be Pollyannish about it, but I think we have the right people in charge of the U.S. military and U.S. defense policy right now to deal with this extremely risky and dangerous situation.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when it comes to the president's rhetoric the other day, it almost echoes Harry Truman from 72 years ago, and it almost appears that some people in media and Democrats and others, it's like the old Groucho Marx line from the movies, whatever it is, I'm against it. Just because the president said it, they don't like him personally, they're going to attack him for it, but it seems to me that the rhetoric itself conveyed the message very, very well.
It was at least a very clear signal that business as usual is over and that they have gone far enough that we have to consider these dire circumstances. That was their choice, not ours. And this president didn't campaign in starting wars and getting involved in contingencies. And I think the whole country should at least agree on that when they think of this president. But I think that he's an expert at shocking systems and making people have to think straight about a new deal. And I think that's where he would like to go, but it's really completely in the hands of this third-generation madman in North Korea, and whether he is willing to engage in a suicide pact kind of activity or if he's going to be rational and pull back and see what kind of deal he can strike.
Before we let you go, we did mention, of course, you are a candidate for lieutenant governor. For people who'd like to know a little bit more about you, because you're talking state issues as well all over Idaho, what's the web address?
YatesForIdaho.com, Yates, F-O-R, Idaho.com. And I appreciate anyone going there and signing up for email, contributing if they're so inclined, but that's where some issues we'll post from time to time as the campaign unfolds. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about things that sometimes don't touch on Idaho, but I know from traveling the state, this is very much on voters' minds. And while it's not a state government issue, we all care about what's happening here. We've got members of our own extended families in many cases that are standing watch for us on this.
Super. Well, we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Thanks so much, Bill. Take care.
You too, sir. Steve Yates joining us this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com, 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. Going to talk a little bit about some road safety and some other law enforcement issues coming up before this hour wraps up. That's on the way today. We're at 20 minutes after 8 o'clock, and it's 60. Hope you can stick around.